Listeners have asked me to discuss UNC Chapel Hill's abrupt shift to virtual learning. Although I generally try not to criticize individual schools, a close look at UNC's decision-making process pretty clearly illustrates just how quickly these situations can spiral out of control in the face of this pandemic. For those of you not following this closely, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill made a rapid decision to shift to fully remote learning after discovering 135 new COVID-19 cases on campus after just 1 week of classes. Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this rise in cases and the university's subsequent decision is that no one was actually surprised. Input from internal stakeholder groups like faculty members, staff workers, minority groups, and student campus leaders, as well as external advisors like local county health officials, showed that all of them had expressed significant concern about returning to in-person instruction. Nikhil Rao, a student government leader who has met monthly with the administration since April, told NBC News everyone told the university not to reopen and it was only a matter of time. Another student government leader, Raleigh Kurt, also met regularly with the administration and said there was a consensus among all student leaders who are involved in these meetings that remote learning was the best and only option. UNC Chapel Hill's decision was national news, but what didn't make the headlines was the fact that the decision by university leadership was announced just 1 hour and 15 minutes before the 5 p.m. deadline for fall tuition cancellations, leading many to agree with Sadie Rice, a sophomore, in her assessment that it's painstakingly clear that it's never been about the students. Every decision they have made has been about money. So how do we interpret this situation based on the information that's publicly available? After all, this doesn't seem to be a situation in which leaders acted without access to information or without consulting the right constituencies. They appear to have had the tools and the information necessary to make a sound decision, and yet very quickly, after only about a week, the reality around the errors within their decision-making process have become painfully apparent. Speaking of decisions, make a good one. If you like the contents of this video, let me know. Hit the like and subscribe buttons below, as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos when they appear. In my work, I talk to dozens and dozens of campus leaders. All of them say the same thing privately, which is something they are unable to be frank about publicly. Strictly online instruction is not a financially viable path forward for the vast majority of schools. Colleges and universities were able to squeak by financially when they moved to online last spring, largely because they'd already collected tuition and fees from students, enrollment was pretty well locked in, and the situation was believed, or at least hoped, to be temporary. The situation schools find themselves in now is, of course, completely different. Recall that back in April, I said this: most schools are going to be in pretty good shape, but that claim has some underlying assumptions. And I would say, obviously, the greatest assumption is what is the duration of what we're going through. So, for example, if the stay-at-home orders persist into the fall semester, then actually sort of all bets are off. Schools that are in a good financial situation still stand the best chance of weathering the storm, but in fact, this will be a far greater strain on institutions than what they were previously experiencing, which was basically, for the most part, their students leaving midway through the spring semester. Schools now face a cascading sequence of problems. Lack of employment means some people cannot afford to attend the college of their choice. The pandemic persisting into the summer destroyed a major source of revenue for schools, which is summer events. And of course, summer enrollment was down as well. As the fall begins, campuses now face what Terry Hartle, Senior Vice President of Government and Public Affairs at the American Council for Education, described to CNN as a perfect storm. Lowered enrollment means less revenue, and not just in terms of tuition, but also the revenue schools generate through fees, parking, meals, housing, to say nothing of the loss of revenue for all of the local service industries like restaurants and bars that rely on those same students as their primary customer base. Sports cancellations means the cancellation of lucrative repeated events throughout the fall, lowering revenue, not just from the events themselves, but from corporate sponsors who donate in order to be seen and otherwise included at those events. Donations to colleges in general will be down, likely way down. as the in-person visits that big donors expect are not possible, the alumni events that create a sense of community are canceled, and the employment downturn means that people have less money available to give. And finally, colleges may well be forced to begin to discount their core product, education, as their customers who are stuck at home engaging in remote learning decide that they aren't getting their money's worth at the current tuition rates. Many schools are committing the fatal error of failing to recognize the size and scope of the problem before it is too late. History will favor the schools that swallow their pride, accept that for the time being they will need to be smaller, leaner organizations that can't do everything for everyone, and aggressively reorganize for the future, instead of slowly bleeding themselves dry while they wait hopefully for the status quo to be restored, which, as we all know now, would simply make schools vulnerable when this happens again. Leaders need to be frank about the severity of the situation in a detailed way. I know of at least a half dozen schools who actually promised their employees that no one would lose their jobs because of the pandemic. These kinds of platitudes are mind-bogglingly misguided. They promise a future that no one can guarantee. They convey the false belief that higher ed is in control of this situation. And finally, create a false sense of security among those whose jobs are currently very much in peril. Schools that address the situation transparently and frankly will be the ones in the best position to cope with the problems that lie ahead. I hope this information has been helpful to you, and I hope your semesters are going as well as they can under the circumstances. Don't miss this week's podcast. I interview 5 students from very different institutions and backgrounds about their experiences during the pandemic. I'll put a link to that in the notes below. I look forward to talking with you again next week.